With Christopher Eccleston bowing out of Doctor Who after one series, the chase was on for the 10th Doctor to make his impact. And with David Tennant in the leading man chair and Russell T Davies in the showrunner chair, Doctor Who would reach new heights of popularity in the UK. So much so that this is the era that got me into Doctor Who, and I can only thank Russell T Davies and David Tennant for that. So we have 4 years worth of TV to get through, and my god is there gold to be found here. Every TV story of the 10th Doctor will be ranked here. However, the animated specials such as The Infinite Quest and Dreamland won't be counted here. I'm only focusing on the live action stories for now. Without further ado, here's every 10th Doctor story ranked. At the bottom of the pit, we have number 36, Fear Her. Yeah, I know, I'm so predictable. Fear Her is undoubtedly the worst story of the 10th Doctor era. The idea of people becoming drawings is a great idea, but the episode lacks any atmosphere or gravitas to make the story scary or chilling. The 10th Doctor and Rose are both insufferable prats, walking around with a degree of smug and arrogance that I just find irritating to watch. At times it feels as though the production team took a camera into a council estate, minus a director, and just made up the story as they went along. I applaud the attempt to do something a little different with the Alien of the Week, because all these decades after the show first aired, it is hard to think up anything that we haven't seen before. The Isolus is a fairly unique creation, a benevolent being that is attacking people because it has empathy for a lost and lonely girl, but because it is snatching them away in a painless way as possible, and proves to be a rather airy fairy in reality, it just fails to capture the imagination or generate any sort of tension. It might just be the most vanilla Doctor Who alien of all time, lacking any personality or excitement. The Doctor lighting the Olympic flame might just be the worst moment of the Russell T Davies era, and one that is masquerading as one of the best. Oh, the irony here. Supporting cast look completely lost, lacking any conviction in their performances, and look like they just wandered onto a set one day and decided to improvise the rest. Fear Her just feels so haphazard, and the fact that it's replaced a script written by the Stephen Fry makes me dislike it even more. Being a cheap, dull and boring episode, Fear Her rightfully ranks as the worst 10th Doctor story. Number 35, New Earth. This is a textbook example of what not to do for a season opener. As it's been a few months since we've seen the new Doctor, here's your chance to show off the actor's talents. Oh wait, no, let's not do that. Let's have cringeworthy body swap comedy. Did you learn nothing from the shortcomings of the Twin Dilemma or Time and the Rani? But that's not the only thing holding this episode back. New Earth lacks any punch or excitement to make an impact when it comes to launching a new season, stretches broad comedy to its limits in giving the last human Cassandra some painfully unfunny cockney to drawl out. Should a story that is supposed to be a commentary on slavery and medical experimentation really be hung with such camp and slapstick dressings? No, it shouldn't. The idea of the Sisterhood's medical breakthroughs all being the result of slavery and torture is a powerful statement to make. It hardly has any time to be considered when we're being distracted with the farcical body swap scenes and Tennant just camping it up. Doctor Who has a good track record of confidently switching between comedy and drama, but the two genres are presented at such opposite ends of the scale that one is actively fighting the other. I would much rather this be a darker episode that concentrated more on the darker underbelly of the Sisterhood's operation, and as a result, New Earth just feels like a watered version of both stories that Russell T Davies is trying to tell. And not only that, I don't feel like they should be part of the same episode at all. I didn't realise making a cocktail of all the cures and everyone giving each other a hug would cure them all, but, well, here we go. Considering the effects work, the makeup and the amount of extras on display, it is an oddly cheap-looking episode that dodges the dramatic bullet at every turn, when what was needed was a sizzling reinstatement of the best of the first series. As a comedy it fails because it isn't very funny, with some embarrassing performances from our two leads, and as a tragedy it just bombs because there is simply no time to give any substance to this situation. New Earth is utter rubbish. Number 34, Love and Monsters. Okay, I swear, Series 2 isn't all bad, it's just that most of the bad stories are crammed into this season. Regardless, Love and Monsters is like the Spider-Man 3 of Doctor Who stories, hated at the time but has gained a substantial cult following. Sadly, I'm not one of them. Also, there's a lot of dancing as well. The idea of someone ordinary becoming obsessed with the Doctor and wanting answers from the past is a nice idea. Sadly, the characters here are overpoweringly stupid. Yes, don't pay attention to the blatantly obvious screaming. Yes, keep on trusting the hyper fan whose friends go missing when they're last seen with him. The script feels insultingly lazy as we move from one set piece to another because the plot needs to. I'm not against Doctor Who taking meta jokes at fan culture, and the Absorbaloff being a metaphor for the worst type of obsessive fan is a cool idea. The angle the rest of the episode takes just feels so heavy-handed. The episode does its best to say how being a fan is like touching God and everything is amazing because you met the Doctor. Oh, just give me a break. Absorbaloff isn't threatening as Peter Kay does his best to stick his tongue out, which may scare your 1-year-old, but it ain't doing anything for me. Now, if this is your favourite story, more power to you, but Love and Monsters rightfully deserves its place on this list. Number 33. Planet of the Dead. Doctor Who had rather a limited run in 2009, so you'd think they'd make every special count, but they really didn't with this one. It has the dullest approach to telling a Doctor Who story in a good long while by revealing the twist of the tale in the title and then following up after half an hour with a bucket load of exposition. We have no reason to connect with what has happened on this planet, there's no personal stakes, and as a result the genocide feels like an event you just shrug your shoulders at. You have a threat that's devoid of personality and a story that always goes for exhibitionism over emotional investment and no real sense of danger. Rather than give the idea of the Planet of the Dead any emotional worth, the script just makes cheap shots about dead people being in Christina's hair. Yay. Furthermore, the script feels more concerned with ideas and cliches that have been done before. Psychic powers and alien swarm bug creatures, which, yeah, that may have been impressive in Series 1, but this just feels trite and redundant at this point. There are a few moments of spectacle and the odd laugh with Lee Evans, but ultimately, one and only Easter special fails to live up to that name. This is the ultimate popcorn telly. It's light, forgettable, and even whilst you're consuming it, you'd be hard-pressed to figure out why you are. Number 32. Doctor's Daughter. You may be surprised to see a Series 4 episode this low, but that's because you've forgotten how excruciatingly nothing this whole episode feels. The Doctor's Daughter is the series pretending to be bold and ambitious, but it's just running on the spot for 45 minutes. It's an odd one because it is an idea that could work, but it needs double the running time, more brave writing, and a stronger actress in the central role of Jenny to even begin to be able to pull it off. I wouldn't want to sit for another 45 minutes of this though. Its biggest selling point is fudged by the fact that Georgia Moffat just feels stiff and unconvincing in the role of the Doctor's daughter, and her pointless death scene and resurrection feels like blatant manipulation rather than just a natural conclusion to the whole story. Add to these problems a jumbled narrative with an unconvincing reveal at its heart, from lousy production values, underdressed sets, and cloying music, and you have a troubled episode planted right in the heart of what is an amazing season. The story has no time to breathe or world build in any way, and the twist that this generation-spanning war has only been occurring for 7 days feels artificial and adds nothing to the story or characters in a substantial way. For being the only true dud of Series 4, The Doctor's Daughter stands out, but only because of its missed potential. Number 31. The End of Time. Yes, I get it. I know this made you all cry with the 10th Doctor's departure. I know it tugs at your heartstrings when his last words are uttered. But you know what else I've seen? The rest of this episode. This is a textbook example of what to do when writing out a departing Doctor. The idea of the 10th Doctor refusing to accept change until its agonising end feels wrong to me. It shows the Doctor is incapable of accepting change and only casts a dark shadow over their successor. Why not reassure the audience that change is fine and the Doctor will be okay despite becoming a new man? It's not like they did it before in 2005. Explanation of the Master's return due to lipstick and draining the life force of Master cult members that are forgotten about as soon as we're introduced to them is a laughable explanation. I would gladly have accepted.
I thought you were dead. Nope.
But now the Master is back, are we going to make him scary? No, let's just have him hop around like Zebedee and shoot lightning out of his hands like the Emperor from Star Wars. What do you mean this won't be the worst scene in Doctor Who history? This is terrifying television, you know. The rest of the special is overlong, padded, and there's nothing to convince me that the 10th Doctor wasn't given a good send-off. Including the Time Lords feels so last minute, despite Timothy Dalton being awesome as Rassilon, and the threat they pose feels non-existent. For a story called The End of Time, very little of that actually poses a threat in the grand scheme of things. Whilst I like the scenes between the Doctor and Wilfred, The End of Time isn't going to stand as a favourite of mine. Number 30. The Runaway Bride. Not against Doctor Who attempting to do a screwball comedy, but you at least have to be funny, and this Christmas special really isn't. Loud, annoying, and lacking any intelligence in the script whatsoever, this could have been a moving grief piece for the Doctor losing Rose. Now we do get that at the end, where the Doctor commits genocide and Donna convinces him to stop, but need I remind you that less than 5 minutes ago this was preceded with an unfunny pratfall? That would be like if the underwater menace ended with the "Do I have the right" scene from Genesis of the Daleks. Whilst Donna is my favourite companion from the RTD era, here she doesn't leave much of an impression, constantly shouting and asking questions, but hey, at least she got better. Backcross fares no better as she barks around giving orders whilst doing nothing, which is a shame as it's an impressive looking monster. The rest of the episode fares no better, with unfunny jokes and slapstick that does nothing for me. I do like the motorway scene. Runaway Bride is just a huge bunch of Christmas nothing for me. Number 29. The Idiot's Lantern. Yep, it exists. You thought I got rid of that gag, didn't you? Number 28. Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks. Even the weakest story of Series 3 is merely okay, which I think is a testament to how strong the series is. The idea of the Daleks using human flesh to evolve outside of their casings is a good idea, but the execution leaves a lot to be desired. It has a lot of good moments, but the elements fail to gel together, sitting awkwardly next to each other. I couldn't figure out what genre I was watching from one scene to the next. The second half abandons much of its characterization for something that is entirely plot-driven, something that was common in the classic series but just feels alien in its new incarnation. As if the plot had been a little better thought through, I wouldn't have minded so much. The second episode begins really well, but the big climactic set piece happens 10 minutes in, leaves the rest of the story just kind of limping to its conclusion. I really don't buy the Doctor willingly helping the Daleks to evolve that's involved the kidnapping and possession of innocent people. Surely even the Doctor would be against this. I don't want to be too hard, because it has clearly been put together with a lot of care. The location is well realised and the performances are direct and are both top-notch. It is simply a case of too many ideas pulled randomly from the bag, and not enough cohesion to bring them all together. It's a stylish mess that I am inclined to be a bit more forgiving towards a story that is trying and doesn't quite make it to the finish line, but this is rather than one that is just winging it, and this is definitely a case of the former, but it ranks as the weakest Dalek story from the first 4 series for me. Number 27. Next Doctor. So, a couple of years ago I had this ranked as the worst Cyberman story, but having mellowed out, this is far from the worst story to feature the Silver Giants. Sadly, a lot of this feels like 2 stories clumsily merged together, and don't complement each other that well. David Morrissey shines as the Jackson Lake Doctor, but for a story called The Next Doctor, the episode is certainly in a hurry to prove that that's not the case. Once the revelation happens that Jackson Lake isn't the Next Doctor, his character has nowhere to go. Sure, he's helping the Doctor defeat the Cybermen, but he feels more like background help than contributing anything substantial. You want to tie this story to the Cyber invasion? Here's the solution. Have both Doctors take down the Cyber King in their respective TARDISes. A hot air balloon in a police box taking down a giant Victorian-looking Cyberman is something I want to see. Cybermen get some cool moments here, such as the graveyard scene and the Victorian setting is a nice backdrop. But again, the Cybermen feel overshadowed by Miss Hartigan, who is terrific, and you can understand why she hates the patriarchy, but I don't get how that makes her worthy to be the Cyber King or having the most brilliant mind the world has ever seen. Yeah, I ain't playing it. Furthermore, the less said about the Cyber Shades, the better. The Next Doctor is a perfectly competent piece of TV to enjoy on Christmas Day, but it could have been so much more. Number 26. The Lazarus Experiment. Doctor Who's attempt to do a B-movie mad scientist story is an admirable way to fill 45 minutes, but somehow they made this quite repetitive. On a positive note, Mark Gatiss absolutely shines as Professor Lazarus, and has a fantastic hero-villain dynamic with the Doctor, as the pair discuss the importance of death and the flaws of the longevity of life. Sadly, between the titular experiment and the cathedral scene, the episode becomes a very repetitive running up and down corridors, with too much of running into rooms, blasting Lazarus, but oh wait, he's not dead yet. Whilst it does cause the episode to feel empty and full simultaneously, it breezes along at a nice pace that doesn't allow you to feel bored, not unfulfilled either. Being a perfectly competent 45 minutes, the Lazarus Experiment sits comfortably in the middle of the 10th Doctor era. Number 25. Voyage of the Damned. Doctor Who meets Hollywood disaster movie? Count me in, I guess. Voyage of the Damned is a fast-paced disaster movie in space, and when taken as a blockbuster Christmas special, it is very well done. Executed with panache and performed in style, You wouldn't want many stories of this ilk, but as an attractive one-off with nice visuals, pace, excitement, and some pleasant touches of character, it's a highly engaging watch. Now, it does come in for a lot of bad press, but I think it is a story that knows exactly what it's doing and gets on very well with doing it indeed. It's more of a crowd pleaser than trying to challenge you, so to speak, on Christmas Day. While it may not be the most intelligent story or script ever written, it's a blockbuster that is designed to entertain you, and is certainly more of a crowd pleaser than most, and sometimes that is enough to recommend. Number 24. Partners in Crime. Sweet mix of comedy and energetic storytelling, Partners in Crime introduces Donna really well, usually telling us how her life has been since her crazy wedding, and the comedy of the Doctor and Donna narrowly missing each other has a nice pace and tone to it, where it doesn't come across as overplayed, and they make a brilliant team once they meet again. The idea of aliens using an obesity epidemic to create new members of their race is a neat idea, and the adipose are perfectly cute aliens to make the episode feel unique. However, like some RTD episodes, it does suffer from having a tone problem. People start dying due to the adipose being born at the end, and tonally it's a bit of a mess. The episode wants me to feel tense, but the adipose are just so cute looking that I find it hard to feel the urgency of the situation. Nevertheless, it's still a good season opener for such a strong series, and a great reintroduction to Donna, even if the tone is not always hitting its mark. Number 23. Utopia, Sound of Drums, and Last of the Time Lords. Series 3 finale, I find it hard to review, as the 3 episodes, despite being one huge story, feel very distinct from one another that can have its positives and negatives. Though let's start with the positives. Utopia is terrific, even without the shock cliffhanger. The idea of the Doctor helping the last of humanity escape the end of the universe is a gripping enough plot to stand on its own, but the return of the Master certainly turns it all the way up to 11, and how lucky were we to get Sir Derek Jacobi as the Master, even if it was only for a couple of minutes. The next episode fares well too. The Sound of Drums is basically a massive love letter to the Pertwee era, with politics, international intervention, and first contact with alien species all coming to the forefront in spectacular ways. Underneath, you also have the thrilling Doctor-Master relationship, which veers from violent enemies and perhaps too close friends in the aftermath of the Time War, and underneath that you have Martha gaining her independence and fighting to keep her family safe from the grip of terror that has seized Britain. So many standout scenes it would be impossible to name them all. There's great highlights such as the flashback to Gallifrey, the childlike Toclafane with murderous intent, the very real threat of guns and bombs threatening the Doctor, and the awesome reveal of the Valiant. This is a great episode to watch. It's an episode packed with incident, character drama, actions, and has a stunning final cliffhanger. Last of the Time Lords, however, doesn't quite stick the landing. Whilst it's a terrific episode for Martha, means of travelling the Earth via chip TARDIS key are questionable at best. It makes you unnoticeable unless you want to be seen. Shouldn't the Toclafane see her as well, knowing she's working against the Master? Turning the Doctor into Baby Dobby was never a good idea, and I know why he couldn't just be kept as an old man, and while the big red button may be pressed at the end, I appreciate how the Doctor uses the Master's telepathic field that has binded the human race in fear. He turns it into hope, which is terrific. I still don't entirely understand how the Doctor becomes a magic flying Jesus, or why that was necessary in the first place. It might be hard to look past its faults, but there is a great deal to like here, amongst a few harmful mistakes. Surprisingly enjoyable and a triumphant end to Martha's travels in the TARDIS. Even if the third episode does let it down, it's still quite a worthy finale. Number 22. 42. Without Graham Harper's dynamic, stylish direction, I think that 42 would be quite a different beast, but with Graham Harper in the director's chair, I think it manages to transcend some cliched writing and becomes a strong standalone episode that pulls off a vibrant narrative in real time. This isn't a particularly deep or complex Doctor Who story or a thoughtful piece. All 42 wants to do is scare the pants off you and provide an hour of adrenaline entertainment, and it reaches that goal with flying colours. Thanks to some great atmospheric, strong performances and a palpable sense of danger throughout, it is easy to be dragged along with the excitement and revel in the gorgeous production values that show commands this time. It might not be the most intellectually stimulating Doctor Who adventure, but it manages to maintain its incredible pace, there's a lively Doctor-companion relationship, and gets in some touch with some powerful emotions too. Sometimes you have to simply react to the story rather than dissect it, which makes 42 an excellent first night performer, but not so satisfying on, say, repeat viewing. Nevertheless, 42 is an adrenaline-filled episode that will thrill and entertain you. Number 21. Christmas Invasion. Giving us one of the finest alien invasions, Christmas Invasion has the full package for what you're looking for from Doctor Who on Christmas Day. It starts off as an intimate affair about Rose trying to deal with the loss of her doctor, but it only gets more ambitious from there, revealing a unit base inside the Tower of London, the heart in the mouth sequence of the human race about to jump from a great height, the epic sight of a spaceship hanging over London, transportation to the Sycorax spaceship, and finally the sight of the Doctor stepping out of the TARDIS in his pyjamas and engaging in an epic sword fight over the rights to planet Earth. It's very well crafted and offers maximum enjoyment. However, I find it a shame that the Doctor is put in bed for the first 2 acts of the story, when you really should be showing off the new actor as much as possible, and that does hurt the episode for me. However, when the 10th Doctor is allowed to shine, it is terrific during the final act. I only wish the Doctor was allowed to do more. Nevertheless, the Christmas Invasion is the special that keeps on giving, never feels underdeveloped or rushed, a fantastic way to kick off the 10th Doctor era and the Christmas specials as a whole. Number 20. The Sontaran Stratagem and the Poison Sky. The perfect popcorn Doctor Who adventure, the reintroduction of the Sontarans with the style and tone of a Jon Pertwee story makes this one of the more entertaining adventures of the 10th Doctor era. The Sontarans make a stunning debut. Mind you, with Christopher Ryan as General Stahl, how on earth could they fail? He is a general I would easily follow into battle. And there is a fantastic reason for what they are doing to the Earth that is saved for the tail end of the story. The idea of taking something as ordinary as car sat-navs and having them emit a toxic gas is an inspired idea, and the Sontarans' plan to turn the Earth into a clone world is fantastic. Shown to be a force to be reckoned with, massacring unit soldiers and gleefully slaughtering their enemies, feel content that they get to die an honourable death in battle. Whilst it's a shame Martha is replaced with an evil clone, meaning she doesn't really get a proper story here, it is a great story for Donna as she reconnects with family and infiltrates the Sontaran ship despite her doubts. The Sontaran two-parter may not be the most intelligent story ever written, but it's thoroughly entertaining, and that's definitely enough to recommend. Number 19. The Unicorn and the Wasp. Murder, a mystery, Agatha Christie and a giant wasp, this episode is like enjoying a cool glass of lemonade on a hot summer's day. Not only that, but this is a lovely homage as to why Agatha Christie's work is so celebrated, but also an interesting look at the woman behind the books as well. It's nice that we learn something about her rather than this simply being a parody of an Agatha Christie story. Her disappearance is a story worth telling and explaining, and I love the structure of the flashbacks with lies, affairs revealed, perverts uncovered, alcoholism revealed, and the suspects may not have committed the crime, they all have a secret to hide. It's a nice callback to other Agatha Christie novels where any one of them could have done it, but they've all got their own secrets. The final sentiment that people will never stop reading Agatha Christie novels is the perfect way to end this short and sweet gem. The Unicorn and the Wasp is a bright and cheerful story from start to finish that rightfully ranks as a fine celebrity historical that this era did so well. Number 18. Planet of the Ood. Return of the Ood as a superb commentary on empires built by slaves is taken appropriately seriously, and it's nice to see human villains and corporations being the villains as opposed to aliens. The Ood Sphere is a wonderfully realised alien planet with an excellent ice landscape combined with an industrial gritty factory setting, which is an inspired design choice. Jim Harper giving the action scenes a sense of scale and gritty atmosphere, a fabulous villain in Tim McInnerny's Mr. Halpin. Seeing the truth behind Ood operations is really grim for a family show, but appropriate enough to get the message across, and Donna hearing their song of captivity is a wonderful scene that shows the horrors of slavery. The grim tone does fit the serial throughout, but when we get to the revelation of what the Ood are really trapped by, it goes off the rails for me a little bit. The giant brain feels too out of place and too surreal for a story like this. I'm seriously getting Time and the Rani flashbacks, and that isn't a good thing. Nevertheless, Planet of the Ood is a mature slavery tale that works reasonably well, even if the ending lets it down a tad, still great stuff nonetheless. Number 17. Army of Ghosts and Doomsday. Okay, I understand I may get hate for putting this story as low as it is, but I won't lie, I find the story a tad overrated. Army of Ghosts is a terrific first part, building up the mystery of the ghosts and the Torchwood Tower perfectly, and the revelation that the ghosts are Cybermen are fantastic, and this scene is set for a wonderful Cyberman story, right? Wrong! Cut to Doomsday the following week where Russell shakes the metaphorical Etch-a-Sketch and says, "Nah, I don't want to." The Daleks come in and it's all about them now. The Dalek and Cyberman conflict is still cool to see, the two most iconic villains of the series engaging in all-out war, but it's comically one-sided. The Cybermen don't even get to kill at least one Dalek, and starts off the trend of the Cybermen playing second fiddle to another monster in the revived series. Nevertheless, as an action-packed explosive finale, Army of Ghosts and Doomsday is still a fun watch to be had, and whilst I didn't care much for Rose during her second series, my god does Billie Piper knock it out of the park with her exit. Sensitively acted by David Tennant and Billie Piper, whilst it was easily past time Rose left us, it does see her go out with an emotional wallop. There's so much that is good here that it's a shame it doesn't quite hold together as well as it should, but there are still a wealth of great scenes. Whilst I don't think it's as great as some may claim it to be, the Series 2 finale still packs a punch whenever I watch it, even if I'm not always on board with the hype train. Number 16. Smith and Jones. Rima Agaman had huge shoes to fill as companion Martha Jones, but luckily Smith and Jones proves she was more than worthy to join the TARDIS. Just the very idea of the intergalactic police catching up with an elderly vampire in such an innocuous setting, transported all the way to the moon, is enticing enough to earn this a winning score from me, but Smith and Jones is an episode of simple but bold images that really shows how assured the show has become in its core audience, and how its confidence is building year by year. Doctor Who wouldn't have dared to feature rain travelling upwards or a hospital on the moon, let alone giant space rhinos walking across the surface to lay siege to the medical facility. What a brilliant way for Doctor Who to have its cake and eat it by plonking a hospital on the moon, because it makes the entire episode studio bound for the most part. It doesn't sacrifice any wonders of exploring the wide universe. Scenes such as the hysterical patient staring out of the night sky, or the Doctor and Martha walking out on the veranda to have a real sense of fairy tale magic about it all. And the Jadoon are one of the rare Doctor Who aliens that come along every now and again that aren't really evil and don't want to conquer or take over the world. They're simply amoral and just kind of scary looking. They will kill you, but only if you commit a crime and get in their way. But if you cooperate them, you will be fine. And how brilliant Martha Jones is here. She manages to save the Doctor's life at the end. No wonder she joins the TARDIS. Smith and Jones is basically one long runaround. It's one that is stuffed with great scene after great scene. Fun characters, pace, wit and style. Just a really strong start to Series 3. Number 15. Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel. The very first Doctor Who story I ever watched, I'll keep the nostalgia talking to a minimum. As a reintroduction for the Cybermen, this is a great debut for them, showing a human population with information being downloaded straight to their heads. It's a terrific idea and is a great upgrade for the 21st century Cybermen. The idea of humans walking into a factory and coming out as upgraded Cybermen is a haunting image. The world building is done reasonably well, as the upper class thrive on their upgrades, whilst the homeless and forgotten are rounded up for experiments and conversion, all under the monolithic Cybus Industries that controls the world's technology. Graham Harper never had the chance to bring the Cybermen to life in the classic series, but here he gets to indulge himself and is in safe hands as they make a stomping return to the series. What an entrance they make at the party, advancing on the mansion and smashing through the windows. Whilst the motivations of John Lumick do feel cloudy, as I can understand him wanting to convert himself and prolong his life, but why enforce this on the whole population? It feels like plot elements were cut that would have made this a bit clearer. Nevertheless, for introducing me to Doctor Who, Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel will forever be special to me. Number 14. The Shakespeare Code. Making William Shakespeare the rock star of his era was certainly an inspired choice, and the thespian within me can't help but enjoy this night at the theatre. I find there is much to enjoy in the Shakespeare Code, that I settle into its world of wordsmiths and witchcraft with such ease. Essentially, this is a case of Doctor Who and Shakespeare team up to take on witches, but to sum it up as starkly as that does the story and the production team a bit of a disservice, because both have been crafted here with a lot of care. It takes a lot of effort to pull off something as entertaining as this, and certainly to do it this stylishly. The dialogue sparkles, the ideas are imaginative, and the director Charles Palmer offers great scope to fill the screen with classic imagery. It's a story that features a strong Doctor and a sassy companion landing in history, forgetting all about the TARDIS and story arcs and simply having a rocking good time investigating a mystery in Elizabethan England. This sort of unpretentious storytelling is quite rare in the series these days. It should be applauded, and once you add in the cinematic visuals and the wits, you have a massively entertaining episode that rightfully ranks as a great celebrity historical. Number 13. School Reunion. Putting aside the Daleks from Series 1, School Reunion feels like the first time the revived series feels connected to the classic era, with the return of Sarah Jane Smith and K9. School Reunion is much more than just a homage to another show. It's a terrific character drama in its own right. It's a well-paced mystery with some memorable set pieces and a satisfying resolution that is tied into the theme of loss that the series is exploring. I'm amazed at how much they managed to pack into this one episode without any of it feeling too rushed. Doctor gets a great number of moments, his face-to-face with Mr. Finch and his temptation at bringing back the Time Lords, and whilst I'm not a fan of Rose and Sarah Jane's rivalry, as it comes across as petty more than anything, Elizabeth Sladen's triumphant return to the series is fantastic, and she sets my heart fluttering whenever she appears. Sarah is still feisty, nosy, nervous and brave. It's like she never left the series, and I love the way she so effortlessly shows the newbies how it should be done. She's scared when she needs to be, asks the right questions, queries the Doctor's motives only when absolutely necessary, and just remains as resourceful as ever. The Krillitanes are creative antagonists, and with a great villain performance from Anthony Head, School Reunion is such a bold and nostalgic watch that I never tire of watching. Number 12. Gridlock. Population being isolated from a killer virus but kept together by their faith, that aged like fine wine. No other show would produce something as insanely unique as Gridlock, and every time that happens, it makes me love Doctor Who just that little bit more. Everything that made New Earth feel so empty in Series 2 is given plenty of substance here. Gridlock manages to explore its world in some depth because we're always on the move. We juggle some wacky concepts and characters, exciting with some visually arresting set pieces, and delivering a handful of some of the most emotive moments in the series that we had to date. Not all bad for a 45-minute episode. David Tennant seems so much more comfortable in Series 3 without a happy-go-lucky Rose Tyler holding him back, and is delivering one knockout performance after another here. Prima Agaman gets to carry a subplot of her own and prove that she is not wasted either. Gridlock proves that Russell T Davies is the most unpredictable of Doctor Who writers, always trying a stab at something new, very often achieving hugely entertaining results. And to add to all this, we've got the return of the Macra. For being one of the most surreal Doctor Who stories ever made, Gridlock will go down as one of the unique stories in the 10th Doctor era. Number 11. Tooth and Claw. The story behind this episode is that RTD wrote this in a weekend, and if that's the case, I'm seriously questioning whether he was human. Russell T Davies and Euros Lyn work up the scares, build a tangibly rising atmosphere of terror, and seed the show with terrific character moments to make Tooth and Claw one of the shining gems of Series 2. The script in particular seems to be a response to Davies's critiques, who complain that he writes nothing but kitchen sink drama and fluff. Instead, he knocks them out with his tightest piece of writing yet, turning the setting into a conundrum to be puzzled out and utilised to defeat the wolf. As a visual piece, it's still one of the most successful episodes of the new series, every shot beautifully considered and edited together with dynamic fluidity. The performances are all top-notch, with David Tennant really making his mark as the manic, wild-eyed Doctor. And whilst I'm not a fan of the 10th Doctor and Rose's bet to make Queen Victoria say, "I'm not amused," David Tennant finally gets a full episode to shine in, with Pauline Collins producing a sympathetic and resourceful Queen Victoria, and when you strip away all the gloss, there is an intelligently rendered tale to be unearthed here, one that is happy to just scare the pants off you. This is a Philip Hinchcliffe horror for the next generation. It's fast-paced, it's scary, it's brilliant entertainment that is perfect for Halloween viewing. Number 10. Stolen Earth and Journey's End. Assembling Earth's mightiest heroes to fight the Daleks 4 years before the MCU was able to do so, this Series 4 finale packs so much, and for the most part succeeds with flying colours. The Stolen Earth is phenomenal television, the closest we have ever come to a movie for the new series, with all the velocity, exhilaration and astonishing production values you would expect if Doctor Who hit the big screen. The first half is astonishingly fatalistic, with the Earth stolen and attacked, friends caught in the crossfire and the human race being conquered. The TARDIS flies into the heart of the problem, the Doctor realises that his friends have all found each other, and the sense of euphoria and pride at their union is just phenomenal. Russell T Davies juggles mad concepts, returning villains, emotional moments and a whole host of brilliant companions, combined with the return of Davros brought to life brilliantly by Julian Bleach, and you have a phenomenal 45 minutes of television. However, with Journey's End, I feel it does buckle under its own weight, and some characters are shoved in the corner until they're needed again, and the idea of the Dr. Donner is a sweet idea, though I ain't a fan of how the whole conflict is resolved by pressing buttons on a control panel. Need I remind you is located in a prison cell of all places? Nevertheless, Donna's departure is heartbreaking and serves as one of the finest companion exits, a proof of how the Doctor can make life better for one person. Being a terrific celebration of the past 4 years, Stolen Earth and Journey's End rightfully deserves its place in the top 10, even if it's not entirely perfect. Number 9. Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit. Most underrated story from this era, this two-parter combines the styles of a Troughton base under siege and the gothic horror of the Tom Baker era, and succeeds perfectly. It's almost the perfect fusion of classic Doctor Who, base under siege, ventilation shafts, monsters, suspense, slower scenes that allow for some complex dialogue, and a stylish production, pacey action, emotional drama, and the complex characterization that you can find in the new series. There's just something about the interaction between the cast, the chemistry, information we're given, and how they react to the situation that they're in, that just sells these characters as a group of desperate people trying to get out of this situation alive. When these people do die, it just really means something. Superbly cast, and this is just one aspect of a genuinely impressive production. It feels like it had more time than usual lavished upon it. Even Murray Gold's music feels like a lesser collection of emotive themes and geared perfectly towards the atmosphere and the action. The Doctor and Rose are separated for much of the story and work extremely well within their own storylines, but there is always that longing feeling of worry for each other's safety that permeates every scene, and given the dire situation that they are in, it is quite believable and natural. The idea of the beast being the ultimate evil and sin in every religion is a terrific idea, that combines science and mythology, and Gabriel Wolf's voice perfectly brings the monster to life that will guarantee nightmares. For being a perfect base under siege story that ranks the horror factor up to 11, this ranks as one of my favourite 10th Doctor stories for very good reason. Number 8. The Fires of Pompeii. Yet another episode that I feel gets overlooked in this era. There isn't one part of this story that isn't firing on all cylinders, from the excellent performances, the quality direction, astonishing effects, and an excellently crafted script that pushes the Doctor and Donna into some very difficult decisions and forcing them to confront each other's morality, and the climax which delivers one dramatic punch to the gut after the next. It's one priceless scene after another, culminating in one of the most devastating endings to any Doctor Who story. Blistering dramatic final 10 minutes that will leave you gasping for air. This is the episode where Catherine Tate proved her dramatic potential, and her chemistry with David Tennant is positively sizzling. The scale of this episode is immense. The image of the Pyroviles stomping around inside the volcano, giant behemoths with sparks flying from their every footstep, is fantastic. Another astonishing set piece and the highlight of the episode visually is the volcano exploding and the ash reaching out to block out the sun. Donna condemning the Doctor is powerful drama, likes that we haven't seen since maybe the massacre in 1966. He slaps down his objections after his brutal abandonment of the family they have gotten close to. The Doctor and Donna as the household gods is a lovely finishing touch. For being a wonderfully realised historical, Fires of Pompeii certainly needs more recognition. Or better yet, you can also read the Target novel. Number 7. Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead. Two-parter that tackles so much within 90 minutes, but Stephen Moffat certainly makes this work. The first part is the perfect scene setter, packed full of mysteries, introducing us to all the major players, brewing a stifling atmosphere, and relishing in some terrifying ideas. With the advent of Donna's so-called death, the second part is one knockout scene after another as the narrative insatiably unravels, but the surprises just keep on coming. When you look at what Stephen Moffat is juggling here, a library planet, killer shadows, virtual reality, Doctor and Donna facing their own futures, a post-dated love story, the fairy tale adventures of a dying child, this is a remarkably packed script that brings all of these elements together for a remarkable conclusion. At the same time, Stephen Moffat throws in lots of ideas like ghosting, nodes, walking skeletons, while still having time to make some intelligent comments on the conventions of TV. Add to that the debut of River's song, played wonderfully by Alex Kingston, and you have a wonderful sacrifice for her that still makes me sad, despite having only just met her in this story. This two-parter begins a 5-episode, 10 out of 10 streak, a revived series would never have since, and I can only love this story even more for that. Another home run from Stephen Moffat. Number 6. Waters of Mars. Perfect breaking point for the 10th Doctor, giving us a fixed point in time that the audience isn't aware of, but the Doctor knows full well he can't interfere, sets the stage for a perfect conflict. Emotionally, it's one of the most unnerving and discomforting Doctor Who stories, and it also features one of the most powerful characterization in New Who, economically painted in some very deep strokes. It's a superb cast that totally convinces a unit working together under siege and stress. Lindsay Duncan deserves so much praise for her performance as Captain Adelaide, one of the most impressive guest appearances in Doctor Who's 60-year history. Adelaide is likeable, intense, utterly believable, but a great foil for the Doctor. The story keeps pushing until the end, until you're desperate for a breather. It says some frightening things about the 10th Doctor, who has started believing his own reputation. This is a Doctor who has lost so much at this point in his life, and proves what travelling alone will do to him, even if he doesn't have someone to remind him of his humanity and to keep him in check. During the unforgettable climax, the Doctor declares his godhood and that he is taking over from where the Time Lords left off, and his hubris is instantly trampled on by Adelaide, who demands to know who the hell he is to decide who the little people are. When she backs away from him, genuinely terrified by what he has become, the audience realise that even the Doctor has crossed the line. He declares himself terrifyingly unstoppable. As Adelaide tells him like a slap to the face it's wrong, it's just incredible TV. For being a terrifying base under siege story that has a closer look at the Doctor's actions, The Waters of Mars will easily stand as one of the 10th Doctor's finest. Number 5. Human Nature and the Family of Blood. Breathtakingly good throughout, there isn't one part of this story that isn't firing on all cylinders. Over the course of this two-parter, we experience a charming and ultimately heartbreaking love story, an affirmation of Martha's love for the Doctor, a tear-jerking character study of John Smith, the human version of the Doctor, an exciting action-adventure, some brilliant scares, and a touching commentary on the First World War. The production values are to die for, with Charles Palmer proving a standout director, and his handling of the material is first-rate, pushing the actors to the fore and giving them plenty of room to show off their talents, but also providing some striking set pieces and splendid location work. Whether it is moments of romance or terror, the tone of the piece is absolutely convincing, and helped immeasurably by one of Murray Gold's finest scores for the series, showcasing the talents of David Tennant, Jessica Hines, Freema Agyeman, Harry Lloyd. It is also one of the finest acted stories, with the central romance in particular proving a masterpiece of character drama of the kind that makes it so unique. This is a story that proudly stands in the top 5 10th Doctor stories. Number 4. The Girl in the Fireplace. Love story across time and space, The Girl in the Fireplace has so much to say in 45 minutes. The overall effect of Fireplace is just dazzling. It is so alive with inventiveness, so radiant in its confidence, and the execution, courtesy of Uros Lin, results in one of the most attractive looking Doctor Who stories ever. I love how Moffat slaps two incongruous elements together to really grab your attention. The fireplace on the spaceship, the horse trotting down the corridor, illuminated by artificial lights, the beating heart wired into the ship, Net in a ball gown surrounded by ugly technology. Any one of these moments pushes the magic of juxtaposition of these elements is just so appealing. Our glimpse at the ethereal Paris is typical of this episode's attention to detail. A romance needs a great deal of opulence, and the location work is elegant and alluring, perfectly in tune with its tone. The scene where the droids terrorise the ballroom is so gorgeous to look at that I forget I'm watching Doctor Who for a moment. Extravagant artistic costumes and an exquisitely decorated hall, this is stylishly brought to life that will certainly stand as the best story of Series 2. Number 3. Turn Left. Without a doubt, Catherine Tate's finest hour as Donna Noble, Turn Left is bold, brilliant, and delivers a what-if story with real nerve. Because of its lasting emotional impact on me, the stunning production values, the bleak, uncompromising tone, and adult content, it manages to achieve the impossible. Given the Doctor's absence, this should be the weakest of the series, but it really ranks as one of the best of Series 4, and the two individuals responsible, Russell T Davies and Catherine Tate, should be extremely proud of what they achieved here. Catherine Tate has always been excellent, but here she's utterly amazing, silencing all of her critics with a performance that has gone down in Doctor Who history. Russell T Davies has written an impeccable script, and it's dramatically realised by Graham Harper, giving us a deliciously dark walk through the last 4 years of alien invasion, and showing us the consequences of them without the Doctor's interference. Jacqueline King and Bernard Cribbins provide the best support that Tate could ask for, wrapping up the episode with some weighty talent while still giving her the limelight. The World Without the Doctor is a terrifying place. The episode never shies away from how much we are in his debt, but the human race is a formidable force too, and Donna proves once and for all what an incredible person she is, suffering terrible indignities, watching her world collapse, and willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to put things right. I couldn't love her character more than I do in Turn Left. This is a superb what-if story that truly shows us the power of the Doctor. Number 2. Think. Without a doubt, the finest Doctor Light episode there has ever been, and it's certainly a story that I would show to newcomers, and the Doctor is barely in it. Sally Sparrow is instantly likeable as our main character for the week, resourceful, funny, intelligent and compassionate for those around her. The Weeping Angels are terrific villains that make a terrifying first impression, creatures that freeze into rock whilst they're being observed, and sent you into the past when you blink. Just an inspired villain, but I don't think they would have had the impact without the direction from Hetty MacDonald, keeping them as statues because we the audience can still see them, a perfect way to keep the suspense going. Combine that with a timey-wimey plot about getting the Doctor his TARDIS back that doesn't feel convoluted and feels so tightly written. It's easily one of Stephen Moffat's finest scripts. You can see why the Weeping Angels made such an impact and even beat the Daleks in the favourite monster poll, and it would be number 1 on my list, but that honour has to go to... Number 1. Midnight. Yeah, I know, I'm so predictable for having this as my number 1, but it's my favourite for a damn good reason. I know RTD has a reputation for turning Doctor Who into a kitchen sink drama, but this episode will prove you wrong. The simple act of repetition may seem basic on paper, but this episode brings every aspect of horror and tension to the very end. They are such simple ideas and yet they're so effective. That's why this is so chilling. Hanging on the ceiling and walls, the darkness hiding nasties, the game of repeating phrases, the horror behind the eyes. RTD doesn't need money to frighten his audience when the simple act of locking terrified people in a confined space and scaring them to death does the job better than practically any Doctor Who story. How the story shifts from the horror of the entity to the horror of the passenger's reaction broke a real sense of dread in me. Unknown aliens are frightening enough, but unrestrained paranoia is a whole new level of psychological horror that the show rarely feels compelled to explore. This is the only story where the people that the Doctor is trying to save are so frightened that they turn on him and try to kill him. Not people who are under any alien influence or being brainwashed, they're just normal, frightened people, and that is simply terrifying. The simplest of ideas so effectively executed, the most complex characterization. Midnight surprises you throughout and tightens its grip around your throat until you're gasping for air at the ending. I remember watching this on transmission and just being scared to death by this as a 10-year-old, but also blown away by how much the characters were as frightening as the monsters. It was worth the cast almost losing their minds being cooped in one set for days on end, because the performances in it are brilliant. David Tennant is exceptional, and Leslie Sharp gives one of the most terrifying performances in Doctor Who's 60-year history. Midnight is easily the best story of Series 4. It's Russell T Davies' finest Doctor Who script, the greatest story of the 2000s, and definitely my favourite 10th Doctor story. So that about wraps it up for the 10th Doctor. Join me next time when the 11th Doctor will be making his debut, who certainly had big shoes to fill. I'll see you all then.